सभा प्रारंभ प्रार्थना म्हणूया. दक्षिणास्य समारंभा शंकराचार्य मध्यमा अस्मदाचार्य पर्यंता स्मर्या गुरु परंपरा श्रुति स्मृति पुराणानाम आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शंकरलोकशंकरं शंकरं शंकराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः. परिज्ञानाश्रम श्री गुरु शंकर परिज्ञानाश्रम शंकर सद्गुरु केशव वामन कृष्ण पांडुरंग आनंद परिज्ञान गुरु सद्योजात शंकर सद्गुरु गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरु साक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरुवे नमः. ओम सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै. ओम शांति शांति शांति. Jai Shankar to everyone and welcome to this episode of the Sayujyam Atmabal series. Sayujyam marks the culmination or the coming together of two great events, the 75th birth anniversary of our Paramaguru Parignanashram Swamiji Tritiya and the 25th anniversary of the year in which our present Mathadipati Srimad Sadyojat Shankarashram Swamiji became the Mathadipati. Swamiji has been guiding us for the last 25 years and taking the Samaj forward. And I must say, Chitrapur Saraswats have served with distinction in all walks of life, all fields, and the armed forces is no exception. We have today General Bandur Nagesh Ma'am, himself a highly decorated and distinguished army officer, and he will be speaking to three service officers, one from each branch of the armed forces. And today's talk is about how the amchi youth of today can and should consider a career in the armed forces as an option which can be as lucrative or even in some cases more so a career than a career in the corporate world. It is my privilege to introduce Nagesh Ma'am, Major General retired N Rao Baindur Nagesh Ma'am, AVSM, VSM and BAR, joined the army through the NDA. He was commissioned in the Army Ordnance Corps in 1961. He is a paratrooper and an expert on military munitions. He is also a PSC dagger, meaning he has not only done staff college but has been an instructor in the esteemed institution. He has attended the higher command course at MO, is a graduate of the National Defence College and has attended the core program for select senior officers. He has also served in the Directorate General of Military Training as a colonel and raised the NBC Warfare Cell and commanded 15 FAD and COD Kanpur, both with distinction. He retired from the army in 1996 after serving in several important command, staff, instructional, diplomatic and regimental appointments, including AMA or Assistant Military Advisor in Bangladesh, Commander Karnataka and Goa Sub-area, and Major General AOC Northern Command. His last assignment was Additional Director, General Ordnance Services at Army HQ in New Delhi. He was also elected as Colonel Commandant of the AOC. Major General N Rao was also cleared for promotion to the rank of Lieutenant General when he was superannuated. He has participated actively in both the 1965 and the 71 wars with Pakistan and has seen action on the fronts. He has been decorated thrice by the President of India and has been recognized for his excellent service and accomplishments. General Rao is a management expert and has served as logistic consultant to Indal, which is a corporate body, after retirement. He holds an MSc degree in Defense Studies and has also done post-graduation in Materials Management. He has attended the Senior Defense Management course in College of Defense Management, Secunderabad. He has also visited Bangladesh, Japan, South Korea, Hong Kong, Thailand, USSR and the UAE when in service. Post-retirement, he has led teams for relief and rescue missions after the Gujarat earthquake in Bhuj, to Little Andamans after the tsunami, and the Upper Bihar after the floods in the Kosi River. He was responsible for implementation of the personality development in all institutions of the Vikhe Patil Foundation School in Pune. He is a prolific writer, and you can read his article every year in the Canara Saraswat under the series headed Military Musings. We have called our episode today Military Musings with his permission, and I think it is the title is very apt. So I hand over to Nagesh ma'am. Please take the program forward. Thank you.
Jai Shankar. Hello everybody. Thank you, Krishnanand. The Amchi martial clan is a proud little select group of Chitrapur Saraswat officers and soldiers, sailors and airmen who were privileged to serve in the armed forces of India. And they have done themselves proud in all branches of the Army, the Navy and the Air Force. Some have been killed in wars, many have won gallantry awards and also distinguished themselves in diplomatic assignments, on UN missions, in training teams abroad. Many have won accolades for other specific accomplishments. Amchis have participated in World Wars I and II and all wars with Pakistan and China and other engagements in independent India. Our community has got generals, admirals, air marshals, and that is not a mean achievement considering that we are a very small minority community. It is a great privilege and honor, therefore, for me to introduce to you three outstanding Amchi officers of the Indian Armed Forces. My son, Colonel Ashwin Baindur, represents the Army. Commodore Sadashiv, Nausena Medal from the Indian Navy, and Wing Commander Prakash Kalavar of the Indian Air Force. Sorry, did I say Sudhir? I must say Sadashiv, Commodore Sadashiv Vomatkere, Nausena Medal from the Indian Navy, and Wing Commander Prakash Kalavar of the Indian Air Force. All three come from military families and have now retired from service. I propose to engage with each of the three officers in an interactive conversation to highlight salient issues concerning life in the armed forces. Towards the end, I shall be requesting Air Marshal Munkur Pratap Rao, who retired as the Vice Chief of Air Staff, to share a few thoughts about the service to add flavor to this discourse. But first, allow me to introduce you to our three speakers. Colonel Ashwin Baindur, retired, Corps of Engineers, Indian Army. Colonel Ashwin Baindur is a retired combat engineer of the Indian Army. He was commissioned into 110 Engineer Regiment and had the privilege of commanding the same with distinction in Pokhran under very difficult field conditions. Part of a distinguished military family, his two uncles and maternal grandfather have also served in uniform. He has seen military service in the desert, in the mountains, and in the plains. He has served in J&K and also in the Northeast. He was posted as an instructor to the Military College of Telecommunication Engineering and also in the College of Military Engineering at Pune. As a major, Ashwin served as a field company commander during Operation Vijay in Dras during the 1999 Kargil War, for which he was awarded the Northern Army Commander's Commendation Card. He has lived an adventurous life in the Army and was part of the successful Corps of Engineers expedition to Nanda Devi in 1993. A keen military historian, naturalist, science writer, and Wikipedian, He retired in 2016. He was awarded the prestigious Sparrow Award in 2017 for his nature club activities. He has done staff college and is a qualified paratrooper. He is extremely fond of animals, trekking and bird watching. Commodore Sadashiv Vomatkere, Nausena Medal of the Electrical Branch of the Indian Navy. Commodore Sadashiv Vomatkere joined the Electrical Branch of the Indian Navy in 1987 after his B.Tech in Electrical Engineering from IIT Madras. He has also earned an M.Tech in Computer Science from IIT Bombay in 1992 and a postgraduate diploma in management from JVIMS Mumbai in 2002. He has been actively associated with various academic and technology initiatives of the Indian Navy for over 25 years in the areas of software development, information security, embedded systems, and reliability and maintainability. He was one of the pioneers in the development of cryptographic and network security solutions for the Navy, for which he was awarded the Nausena Medal by the President of India in 26 January 1998. In his 34 plus years of his naval career, he has served on board several ships and in different organizations, including Naval Headquarters. He recently retired on 31st January 22 after 34 years of distinguished service in the Indian Navy. A nationally recognized authority on cyber security and cryptography, he has over the years been a member of national level expert committees and project steering and review groups for information security in the Ministry of Defense and in the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. He is a member of the External Expert Committee for Postgraduate Programs in Cybersecurity at IIT Delhi and was a member of the Board of Studies for Electronic and Communication Engineering at the Dr. Ambedkar Institute of Technology, Bangalore. He is also an honorary adjunct fellow in cybersecurity at the National Maritime Foundation, New Delhi. So many feathers in his cap. Sadashiv is the son of Major General Dr. Sudhir Vomatkere, VSM, retired. His younger brother, Captain Pandurang Vomatkere, is also a highly qualified technical officer and yet serving in the Navy. He is posted at Hyderabad. Sadashiv has attended the basic mountaineering course at HMI Manali in 1985 and has cycled 10,000 plus kilometers solo extensively all over India right up to Leh. In 1997, he did a 300 kilometer, 25-day high altitude trek along the old Silk Route from Leh to Karakoram Pass along with his father, brother and mother. A very few interesting facts about Sadashiv and his family. Sadashiv and his brother Pandurang and Sudhir have all served as commissioned officers in the armed forces at the same time and all have got degrees while they were serving. In fact, Sadashiv got his BSc and Sudhir got his PhD at the same convocation program in IIT Madras. Wing Commander Prakash Kalavar, transport pilot of the Indian Air Force. Wing Commander Prakash Kalavar was born in October 42 at Dharwad. He was brought up and educated in Dharwad and Pune. Prakash graduated in 1962 and joined the IAF directly in 1963. He was commissioned as a transport pilot in 1964 and retired as a wing commander on permanent secondment to civil aviation in May 1987. He is now settled in Pune. He is a second generation defense officer. His father served in the Royal Air Force during World War II and later with the Indian Ordnance till he passed away in 1955. Prakash has a fantastic flying record with 43 years of non-accident active flying, 23 years with the Air Force and 20 years with the Airline Corporation Aviation. Sorry. He has logged over 16,500 hours on 8 different types of aircraft all over India and overseas, primarily in Borneo, Malaysia and Nepal. Prakash has a wealth of operational experience. He actively participated in the 65 Ops with forward troops and provided transport support during the 1971 Bangladesh Liberation War and in Siachen operations in 1983-84. He has commanded multiple flying squadrons while with the Air Force and has held responsible positions in corporate aviation such as chief pilot, general manager, etc. He has been flying instructor and examiner both in the Air Force and in civil aviation. Prakash and his wife are very fond of travel and have visited the US and covered many countries along the Pacific Rim, including Malaysia, Borneo, Indonesia, Philippines, Vietnam, Cambodia, Korea, China, and Japan. Post-retirement, he is managing his housing society affairs and is a member of the Indian Ex-Servicemen's League. With that, we come to the end of the introductions, and I'll turn to Ashwin with the first question. So, Ashwin, let me begin with you. You have been awarded the Army Commander's Commendation Card on 2 occasions. Once during the Kargil War, and second for setting up a world-class museum in the College of Military Engineering at Pune. Can you tell us briefly the work that you did under enemy fire during the Kargil War that attracted the attention of the higher-ups?
Thank you, sir, for giving me the opportunity to be here. I was commanding 30 Field Company of 110 Engineer Regiment during Operation Vijay at the time. My regiment moved into Dras immediately after the fall of Tiger Hill. My field company was operating northwest of Dras on the line of control, and the first task given to my company was to improve road communication from Dras to Sando Top to make the jeep track at that time worthy of taking lorry traffic over a 5-kilometer distance. This we did in 5 days flat. We were then asked to extend the track to Pathar, a point short of the LOC, when the border roads got into the play and they got the task instead. We were then tasked to help the infantry build their defenses and accommodation at the forwardmost pickets from Tri Junction to point 5100, a distance of about 15 kilometers apart, at 5 different locations on the exposed ridgeline in the face of the enemy. We deployed half-section parties because these locations were very constricted. At one place, point 5240, which is nothing more than an exposed rocky knoll, barely 15 meters across, we had to use a lot of little explosions with as little as 50 grams of explosives for dozens of blasts because we required the same rock for construction and we could not afford to let it either fly off or roll off downhill. My soldiers literally clung to rock faces to be out of the danger zone. However, our main task was to construct a complete battalion administrative base at 12,000 feet. We had to construct 13 different living sheds and barracks of 5 different types in just over 2 months. The normal time required is 3 months. With about 80 troops, the normal number of troops required are 200. And then this became the highest battalion location in the entire Kargil sector. The time was so short, the people too few, the stores were delivered late to us, the weather extremely cold and windy, and the intricacy so mind-boggling. We found ways and means to complete the construction just in time with Herculean efforts by the Jawans under inhuman conditions of cold and wind. Remember, Dras is the second closest, coldest place in the world in winter. And we completed our task in time just before Zojila closed so that we are not trapped on the wrong side of the pass for the winter. It was for this task that I got the Northern Army Commander's Commendation Card.
Ashwin, you have many feathers in your cap. Apart from being an engineer and a military historian, you're fond of adventure, nature, ornithology, and entomology. You scaled the Nanda Devi with the Sappers expedition. What was your role in that expedition?
Every officer has the good fortune of experiencing some adventure or the other during his service career. In my case, it was the 1993 Corps of Engineers expedition to Nanda Devi Sanctuary, which is very difficult to access. The peak itself is 25,600 feet high. We had to lay 5,000 feet of fixed rope in certain treacherous patches just to reach the base of the mountain. It is a pristine wilderness which has been closed to human access since 1980 and was known as Shangri-La, the Valley of the Lost Horizon, amongst the trekkers. Due to my interest in nature, I was made the leader of the ecological part of the team. My job was to lead a group of scientists to remote parts of the sanctuary to record the wildlife, flora and fauna. We meticulously recorded many rare birds, butterflies and plant species. While I didn't climb the mountain, I roamed the entire valley, which none of the other climbers got a chance to do. We also cleaned all the previous campsites and brought literally a ton of garbage from previous expeditions. It was a fascinating adventure from which I learned many things.
Sadashiv, despite being a seaman, I find you have a great affinity for the mountains and for adventure. Apart from cycling all over India, the trek to Karakoram with your family excites everyone's imagination. Can you briefly tell us about the challenges you encountered on the way, especially since your mother was also accompanying you to Karakoram?
Nagesh ma'am, actually my love for the mountains and adventure began much before I joined the Navy. In fact, to let you all into a small secret, I actually wanted to join the army, but when I tried to get into the NDA, I didn't make it. And then I did my engineering and found I had to join the Navy. So actually, I'm a mountain man. And I did all my cycling before I joined the Navy while I was still in college. But my first major trek was in 1982 when I was still in school. It was a survival trek with daddy over the 18,500 foot high Digarla, which is close to Leh. And that was a survival trek with no tents, no stoves, and a 20 kg rucksack for 3 days. Then I also did my basic mountaineering course in HMI Manali when I was in college. I also began distance cycling when I was in college, and my first long solo trip was about in December 85, was a 3,000 kilometer trip around South India. And then in June 87, just before I joined the Navy, I did a trek from Jammu, Srinagar, Kargil, Leh and back. And then I also spent a week in the Kangra Valley. I have taken my cycle up over Khardungla in 1987, which was possibly the first anyone did it. And but by far the best trek I made was to Karakoram Pass in 97. I was in the Navy at the time, and that was a trek with mummy and daddy and my brother Pandurang. It was 25 days on foot with an average altitude of 15,000 plus feet. I was posted on a ship at that time, and my commanding officer, one Commander Akhilesh Bhushan, he encouraged me and he spared me for 60 days from the ship, even though we were sailing at that time. The trek was hard. We would walk an average of 6 to 8 hours a day, but it was beautiful and I will remember it forever. The only thing here is Daddy and Pandu used to go ahead, and I was having some difficulty with my knees, but I had a good excuse. I'll bring mummy and come with her. And mummy managed it quite well. She gamely plugged on, and I think we had a wonderful 25 days. And you did say, what were the challenges you encountered on the way? Actually, we never had any major challenges in that sense of the word. Cycling and trekking is actually quite simple. You put one foot in front of the next, and in God's good time, you get there. So apart from the Digarla trek where daddy twisted and broke his ankle on the first day and walked for the next 2 days with his ankle strapped in his boot. And then we ran out of water, and we had a lot of interesting times, and we all ended up with first degree frostbite on our feet. And we took a couple of months to get feeling back in our feet. But the one thing I distinctly remember is the pleasure of a hot bath after the Karakoram trek, which was the first after 25 days.
Yes, I can imagine that. I think all of us in the armed forces have experienced such a feeling. After a great exercise, being out in the open for many days, you come back and the first thing you want is a real grand bath to relax you back on your feet again. Well, Sadashiv, can you tell us the sea time that you have, which are the different ships you have served on and in what capacity? How well did the Navy treat your family while you were at sea?
That's wonderful. Actually, going to sea is something that most people are not quite familiar with. We are familiar with the Air Force that flies and the Army, that is what you see. I've spent about 5 to 6 years at sea totally in my 34 years of service, which is about the amount an average technical officer spends at sea. Executive officers, of course, they are non-technical, or let's say they're not non-technical now, because now every executive officer is also an engineer, but he has a non-technical role, and they spend even as much as 15 to 20 years at sea. The first ship I sailed on was INS Androth. It is a Petia class anti-submarine patrol vessel, and I first saw that ship in January 1988, where I went after academy for a 2-month acquaintance. We spent most of those 2 months patrolling off Sri Lanka during Op Pavan, and we used to enter Trincomalee every 10 days for food, water, fuel. And subsequently, I also spent 4 months on INS Gomti in 1989, where I got my electrical officer's competency certificate. My first appointment at sea was as a junior lieutenant as weapon maintenance officer of INS Vijayadurg, which is a missile corvette. And my job was primarily looking after surface to surface missiles, surface to air missiles, and the anti aircraft guns. We were a part of the Western Fleet and based in Bombay. On this ship, of course, we didn't have any very long sailings. We used to sail maximum for 4 to 5 days. And Gitu, at that time, my wife Gitanjali, was in Bombay. And by and large, since I was not away for a very long time, it was okay. But immediately after that, I was not married then. But anyway, immediately after that, I got married and I went for my next sea time back to INS Androth. As a senior lieutenant, I was the electrical officer of INS Androth, my second time on that ship. I was also promoted to lieutenant commander when I was on that ship, and I spent 2 years on that ship, sailing extensively in the Bay of Bengal, Andaman Nicobar Islands, and also off the west coast. We were based in Vizag. We were part of the Eastern Fleet, and that's where my wife and son stayed while I was out at sea. All naval bases, especially, the three main naval bases we have are Bombay, Vizag, and Cochin. They are all quite self-contained and have all facilities for shopping, clubs, schools, hospitals, everything within the base. So actually, a family doesn't have to go very far to do anything, to live. Also, when a ship is at sea for long durations, when we're out at sea, we leave an officer and a couple of sailors back. They disembark to stay back and help out the families of the officers and sailors. They sort of contact your family every day and to find out, and they help out. So families actually don't have a problem. We're quite a close-knit family. The only difference between the army and the navy is that in the army, you are regimented. You keep going back to the same regiment. In the navy, it's very, very rare for you to go back to the same ship. But the navy is actually so small that you're actually one big family. And once you've spent a couple of years, you know everybody there. I did my last sea time as a commander, as the electrical officer of INS Mysore, which is a guided missile destroyer, which was part of the Western Fleet in Bombay. My job was to look after all the electrical power generation, distribution, navigation, communications, weapons, sensors of the ship. And we did an enormous amount of sailing, both off west and east coasts. And we also did the anti-piracy patrol in the Gulf of Aden. So that was basically the kind of sea time I did.
Thank you, Sadashiv. You tell us something about your qualifications. You did your BTech in electrical engineering before joining the Navy, and MTech in computer science after joining it. Did you get study leave for it, or were you deputed by the Navy for studying the subject? Also, could you briefly elucidate the different modes of getting into the armed forces as an officer?
Okay. I joined Naval Academy after finishing my BTech in electrical engineering. We were then sent, all engineering graduates who joined, whether you do your engineering BTech in the Navy or outside the Navy, depending on what entry scheme is there, you go to electrical, as an electrical officer, you go to an electrical training school in Jamnagar, and if you are a marine engineer, you go to INS Shivaji, which is in Lonavla, where you do specialized training on warship systems for a couple of years. And after that, you go for your first sea time, usually. And it is usual for you to get selected for your MTech at about that time when you've got about 4 to 8 years of service. the MTech in the Navy is normally considered as a training course. So you do not go on study leave. It is a training course which lasts for 1.5 years or 2 years, as the case may be. And you are selected for your MTech interview based on two things. One is your academic performance on the courses which you did in the Navy when you joined, and on the basis of an interview which is conducted by the professors from that IIT for which you want to go. I was selected for an MTech in computer science, which I joined after a fairly grueling interview with an IIT professor from IIT Bombay. I was not on study leave for that period. It was a training course. However, if you do not get this course, your MTech as a course, you can apply. You can write the GATE, Graduate Aptitude Test for Engineering, and then get admission for MTech on your own, for which you can take study leave of up to 2 years. So
Right.
that is as far as the MTech goes. As of now, there are fundamentally 4 ways of joining the Indian Navy as an officer. The details you can get on the Indian Navy website. I think it's called indiannavy.gov.in. So you can find it there. But the four major entries are the UPSC entries. The UPSC entries, you could write the CDS exam after you have graduated for a permanent commission, or you could write the NDA exam after class 12, again for a permanent commission. Or the third method of UPSC entry is to join after doing your NCC, which you do in school and college, for a permanent or a short service commission. This is the first type of entry, which is possibly the oldest form of entry which is there. It has been there for the last 50 years plus. The second type of entry has just started recently, about 5-6 years ago. It is the direct entry BTech at Naval Academy, where you join after class 12. It is for a permanent commission. This is effectively going to be the major entry into the Navy, because the Navy intends to have all its officers, commissioned officers, as graduate electrical engineers. There are, however, some special entries for certain branches which are not core engineering or Navy, and one of them is the direct entry after graduation for permanent commission in law, sports, or as a musician. Then there are some other entries again for permanent or short service commission as pilots, observers, air traffic control, hydrography, naval architecture, information technology, logistics, education, and the naval armament inspection. The Army and Air Force also have similar entry schemes. You would have to check those out on their websites.
Thank you. That was very educative. Prakash, I'll now come to you. You have a great deal of experience in flying transport aircraft. You have commanded more than one squadron and been an instructor or examiner, and have also flown in the 65 and 71 wars and during the Siachen crisis in 1983-84. Could you please elucidate your experiences in flying transport plane during operations? What was the type of transport support that you provided?
Okay. Now, transport flying essentially means airlifting men and material from one place and delivering them wherever they are required to be. It involves essentially or basically transporting of troops, transporting material, supplies. Also includes VIP flying, casualty evacuation, and large-scale evacuation when and if required. The latest one being of Gang, where people from Ukraine were evacuated. My service flying started in '64 and ended in May '87. During those 23 years, there were 3 wars or warlike operations. The 65 ops with Pakistan, the 71 ops, the Bangladesh, and then the Siachen operations in 83-84. Now, most people think that Pakistan war started in September. Not many people actually know that in February 65 itself, the run of Kutch activity had started, and I was involved in that. We were involved in, my squadron was involved in transporting battalion level troops from the mainland, from the southern sector into run of Kutch. That was my contribution towards flying. The main 65 September operations, I was lucky enough to participate from the ground. I was attached to the forward troops in Fazilka Hussainiwala sector, and I actually saw combat there. That's where I got away with minor injuries, but that was a excellent exhibition of what the infantry does, supported by artillery and uh, armor. 71 ops, I wasn't really involved because I was, some of us, about 10, 12 of us were held back as instructors at the training academy. And we couldn't really support much, except a little bit of rear activity. But in 83, 84, when I was commanding the squadron in Gavalia, that is where my squadron was, almost half of my squadron was involved in transporting troops from the plains into Leh, and from Leh, which is 10,000 feet, to Thois, which is about 12,000 feet. And that was an essential step for acclimatization of our troops before they were inducted into Siachen. That's where we flew a lot. And almost there used to be about half a dozen aeroplanes flying out of Leh to Thois. And on the way back, we used to ferry casualties. That was my contribution towards the operations.
Prakash, you executed a very heroic task on 8 October 1983 and created history by executing a night landing and takeoff in HS-748 Avro from Leh Airfield in Ladakh, the highest airfield in the world, in far from ideal conditions. You evacuated 26 people, including 11 Siachen casualties. Can you please tell us about the difficulties you faced in night flying in the Himalayas? All of us who have been at Leh can well realize the difficulties that you must have had. But please do tell us.
Yeah, if you remember, the first time we met was in Leh, and at the time we were involved in night flying, which was done not on behalf of the Air Force, but behalf of RAW. Yeah, we did land in Leh at night. Now, hill flying is something which needs to be understood. Hill flying basically means mountain flying, and it's pretty tricky. There are no radio navigational aids. There's nothing to guide you in and out in case you are in cloud. So the basic rule is all visual contact flying. If you see the ground, you go in. If you don't see the ground, you don't go into the hills. Now Leh is 10,000 feet. One end of Leh airfield is at 10,300. The other airfield end is 10,600. Flying in mountains as it is pretty tricky, as I said. Weather is a significant factor. It's very treacherous. The winds, gusty winds, and all kinds of things happening, particularly for takeoff and landing in Leh itself, which is, as I said, 10,300 feet at one end and 10,600 at the other end. So you land uphill and you take off downhill. Mostly winds are cross. When CHN operation started, they were expecting a fair amount of casualties. But headquarters at that time was mulling about the thought of exploring the possibilities of evacuation of casualties by night. And that is how the idea was mooted as to try and see if you could do a night takeoff and landing. Now, since I had done it before, I was called by air headquarters and asked to do whichever way it was required. And so finally, on 8th of October, which was the Air Force Day, we managed to do both takeoff, landings. I trained a couple of our squadron pilots, and that was unique in the sense we actually took off, I think about midnight or a little later, with 26 passengers on board. I think 11 or 12 of them were actual serious Siachen casualties, and we evacuated them successfully to Srinagar. Now, that happened to be moonlit night. As I said, During daytime, it's tricky flying into the hills. Nighttime, it's doubly tricky. So this could be done in moon phase. That is the first time an Indian Air Force Avro did that. And I don't know whether it's been done subsequently, but that was something that we could talk about.
Thank you. Prakash, would you say that the armed forces provide a steady job and train their officers well to deal with the challenges that they shall face in handling various weapon systems?
I have no doubt in my mind that a career in the services should be a preferred choice of our young men and women. More so now. Firstly, it gives you a job security. There's good career progression. Standard of living is good. Pay, perks, pension, all have been revised, and they're as good, if not better, than your prospects in the civil. Above all, the pride and the prestige that you have in the services of the uniform is still accepted. Not only that, as you mentioned, the service actually trains a person to manage his resources, whether they are financial, men, or material. To manage them well, not only during your service career, but after your retirement too, managing your family, etc. And then, purely from the Air Force point of view, from the flying branch point of view, it also gives you an opportunity of branching off into civil aviation, very lucrative airline career. Mid-career, after 23 years of service, I was given an option of branching off. I was permanently seconded to civil aviation. People went off to Air India. They did well. Where else would you get an opportunity like that? That's my frank opinion.
Thank you. Ashwin, I get back to you. Could you please educate our amchi aspirants about the pay and allowances in the army and also this concept of one rank, one pension, OROP? The government has revised the pension rules, granting a number of facilities also. Could you please briefly elaborate on those?
The status of a defense services officer is very high in Indian society. We are class 1 gazetted officers and we have good entitlements, good living conditions and perks. We are not government servants per se, we are the nation's servants. And our supreme commander is the President of India. We are subject to a strict military code and military law, which ensure that the armed forces have the highest standards of conduct and morale. While our facilities and conditions of service are often hard, especially during field service, they are second to none in peace locations in the government sector. We have a very good social support network in our army or other parts of the armed forces. We have excellent pay and perks, the best medical facilities, excellent educational facilities, and many other such benefits. We are taught to interact and eat at the same table with honor and decorum, whether we are in the company of heads of nations or with the poorest of poor citizens of our country. Because of this, no section of Indian society enjoys the confidence and pride of our nation's people as an armed forces officer.
Thank you. That's well put. Prakash, I have a question for you. Please highlight the special welfare measures in the armed forces. In particular, I would like you to cover healthcare system, educational facilities, and the welfare housing organization.
Fine. Healthcare, education, and housing. Three more pretty important things in life. Healthcare, during service career, in any case, healthcare is excellent, exceptionally good, and free. That's a given. post-retirement, the ex-serviceman contributory health scheme, which is available to all, is more or less free in any case. And you have access to specialist care either in the military hospitals or in the empaneled hospitals elsewhere. Now, the empaneled hospitals also have the super specialty hospitals now, besides the military hospitals, which themselves are essentially super specialty hospitals. There's cashless treatment available both in the service hospitals as well as empaneled hospitals. That is a facility which, to my mind, is exceptional in services, particularly post-retirement. Schooling, education. Now, everybody knows that most of the service establishments, service stations all over the country have their own Army, Navy, Air Force schools. There's a Kendriya Vidyalaya Sangathan available, which takes care throughout the country, wherever you may be. For higher education, once again, there is a defense quota in most of the professional education institutions. The management institutions also now have, and besides that, higher educational institutions are being promoted in the services itself, like we have the Army Institute of Technology, and there are naval institutions similarly. Housing, everybody knows about the housing schemes. The loans are available in case you don't want to go into a service housing scheme, but Army Welfare Housing Organization is there. Army, Navy housing societies are there. So in any case, post-retirement, all these three things are taken care of. That is something which, to my mind, is not available to a post-retiree, a retiree from the civil services.
Right. Thank you so much. I also think we all have the advantage of group insurance in the Army, Navy, and Air Force, which is also a great boon. Because the most important thing about group insurance is that if a person has not become a casualty and that money has not been paid to the widow, he gets the entire amount of his contribution back at the end of his service. So that's a great help in many ways. Well, I'll come to the last question, Ashwin, and this is for you, because something very important is happening in the country. As you all know, NDA has been opened up for women's entry now, and the first lot of girls have already, I believe, joined the academy. Ashwin, when you commanded 110, you had women officers posted to you. Can you please share your experience with us? What are your thoughts about their employment in the defense services?
I had the privilege of having 4 women officers at the same time under my command in 110 Engineer Regiment from 2004 to 2007. One was an army doctor, my regimental medical officer. 3 were engineer officers. 2 of these women officers were married to male officers in my regiment itself. My unit operated both in field as well as in peace. So I have had a very substantial exposure to the issue of management of women officers in the armed forces. Women officers are basically as good or better than your average male officer. They're sincere, hardworking, they are very good managers, they are multitaskers and extremely motivated. I found my women officers willing to do anything that they were tasked with, whether it was dangerous, critically important, or whether it was mundane or routine. They were very motivated and met all the expectations that I had as a commanding officer. Unfortunately, in the past, women officers had poorer terms and conditions of service than male officers. That has changed. Now they have been given a permanent commission, and various avenues of recruitment such as training and entry through NDA and other academies has opened up. The acceptability in Indian society and the armed forces in India has evolved, though perhaps not as at the pace that we would have preferred. However, women officers have now been in the service for more than 2 decades in the Indian Army, and they are now in every supporting arm and service of the Indian Army. Over time, we hope that they would be part of the combat arms such as the infantry and armored corps as well. Women officers are sent on UN missions. They represent the country in almost every way that male officers do. Overall, their future in the Indian Armed Forces is becoming brighter all the time. While I cannot say much about the women officers in the other armed forces, but it is a well-known fact that women officers are flying fighters, transport aircraft, and helicopters in the Air Force, flying aircraft, and are sent to sea, except for submarines, and they are employed in almost all facets of the defense forces. They have a bright future ahead.
Thank you, Ashwin. And that brings us to the end of this question and answer session. Thank you all. Thank you all. Air Marshal Munkur Pratap Rao, PVSM, AVSM, VM, who retired as Vice Chief of the Air Staff in July 1995, is with us today to share some of his experiences in the Air Force with us. The Air Marshal joined the 10th NDA course as an Air Force cadet in July 1953. Following his passing out of NDA 2 years later, he began his Air Force training at 2 Air Force Flying College, Jodhpur. He received his pilot's wings and his commission as a pilot officer in the IAF in August 1956. He then underwent training as a jet pilot at Conversion Training Unit in Hakimpet before being posted to his first fighter squad. He is a qualified flying instructor and has instructed on several types of aircraft, both piston-engined and jets, and has also instructed NCC Air Wing cadets on gliders. As an Air Force examiner in the Aircrew Examining Board, he evaluated the performance of flight cadets as well as the flying instructors. He commanded a MiG-21 squadron in the mid-70s, and soon thereafter, as Deputy Director of Air Staff Inspection at Air Headquarters, he evaluated the operational preparedness of fighter squadrons and fighter bases. The Air Marshal has flown many types of fighter aircraft, mainly Vampires, Tufanis, Mystairs, Nats, and various MiG variants. In all, he has over 4,850 hours of accident-free flying to his credit and is a master green pilot. He has commanded 2 fighter bases, both in Punjab, and flew several missions against the enemy in Mystairs from Pathankot during the 1965 Indo-Pak War. He is a graduate of the Defence Services Staff College and the National Defence College. The Air Marshal served abroad twice during his career. Firstly as a flying instructor member of our Air Force training team in Iraq, and later as Defence Attaché at our embassy in Bangkok, Thailand. His staff appointments at home began with one as a group captain in the Ministry of Defence, and in the air ranks, he served as Director Intelligence and ACAS Inspection in Air Headquarters, and then as Senior Air Staff Officer in Headquarters Western Air Command before he became AOCNC in the same command. He then returned to Air Headquarters as the Vice Chief of Air Staff, in which capacity he served till he retired in July 1995. The Amchi community is extremely proud of him and his achievements. Welcome, Marshal Pratap Rao. I now request you to share a few words with our viewers. What is your message to the Amchis aspiring to join the armed forces?
Yeah, thank you, Nagesh, and greetings to everyone watching and listening in. In this past 1 hour or so, the speakers have all made very interesting observations not just about how to join the armed forces, but also about life in the armed forces and the opportunities that our lives provide us to pursue our own interests, which are outside of our duties in the Army, Navy, and Air Force. Of course, as they mentioned, the idea is to encourage as many of you as possible, men and women, or boys and girls, to join the armed forces. If, of course, if you have not decided on what you want to do with the lives ahead of you. I'll just add a few observations from the perspective of somebody who spent 4 decades in Air Force uniform and has been retired. As has been mentioned, we no longer are retirees, we are veterans. I see the military as a comfort zone, frankly. It's a place where there are orders. The orders are enforced, and for the most part, the orders are obeyed because there are consequences if you don't obey them. These are characteristics which, over a period of time, they are ingrained. So, for me, as a retired officer or a veteran, whenever I've been to an armed forces establishment after I retired, I've immediately sort of sensed the same sort of atmosphere, a place where there is order, where there is discipline, where the tasks are being carried out without much fuss, and of course, something which has become more important in recent years, a lot of cleanliness around. And even now, when I go to such an establishment, even if it's like a golf course, whether it's a unit or a station or whatever, I immediately feel like I'm sort of going home because this is what I'm used to, I've been used to. And that is why I say that the military is a comfort zone. You feel comfortable, even after you retired for a long time, whenever you've been to one of these places. It is not my intention to glorify service in the Army, Navy, and Air Force. It hasn't been the intention of the speakers before me, because it is, when you come down to it, it's a very serious business, especially when it comes to armed conflict of one sort or the other. Like Nagesh said, I joined the NDA in July 1953 as an Air Force cadet. I was 16 years old then, and I must say, some of the things that we learned there have stayed with me ever since. Some, like say, every cadet is the same. It doesn't matter whether you're from east, west, north, south. Doesn't matter what your religion is. Doesn't matter what language you speak, Kashmiri, Kathiawadi, Konkani, you're all the same. I was fortunate because I was brought up like that. So I'm not going to speak on that aspect at all. I thought I'd speak more about camaraderie, because that is something that the NDA fostered in me and in everybody else. And I'll tell you why. Because camaraderie, I think, leads to cohesiveness. Cohesiveness leads to effectiveness. Effectiveness leads to mission accomplishment. What is it we are all interested at the end of, any mission is to complete it successfully, including, missions like wars and things like that. If you don't win, you can't be second best. You have to be the best, as far as I'm concerned. And anything that helps towards that process, and camaraderie is one of them, is something to be hoped for and aimed for. In India, I feel that, we became friends, and that friendship grew amongst course mates. Not only those in your squadron, but from other squadrons, not only the Air Force cadets, but Navy and Army cadets. And I still have several friends from those days. It grew because of the amount of time we spent together, whether it was on the drill square, PT fields, games fields, classrooms, in the dining hall. Your friendship developed almost without your noticing it. And a stage came, and still comes, I'm sure, when you are prepared to go that extra distance to help anyone from your course. In this case, I'm just talking about my course. From your course, if he asks for your assistance, sometimes even when it comes to breaking the rules, because, we were all teenagers then, and any teenager worth his salt is going to break the rules sometime or the other. I'm sure you'll agree with me there. And then once you pass out of the academy, and then later, in my case, the Air Force Academy, the camaraderie continues. It grows whenever you're fortunate enough to meet your course mates. Whether you're doing a joint exercise, whether you're doing a course together, whether you're on the staff of a training establishment together, that camaraderie grows. And, where it leads, I give you an example. In my last year or year and a half of service, I was working with my course mates who were in the same position in Navy and Naval headquarters and in Army headquarters. And I think it was a Saturday, we got together on the golf course, and then at the 19th hole, we sat down for a glass of beer. Okay, maybe it was 2 or 3 glasses, and we poured out our hearts to each other. Look, we've got these problems between our 3 headquarters. They've been around for months and years. Let's do something, to solve these problems. We don't want them to continue. And frankly, if we had gone about, every government service has its own bureaucracy. If we had gone about the normal bureaucratic ways, I don't know whether we would have achieved much, but we were determined. So we gave ourselves a month or month and a half to acquaint ourselves in greater details with these problems that we had projected to each other between the 3 service headquarters. And then we got together with our staff, and we sat down for a long period of time. And I'm happy to say that we solved many of the problems, not all, but many of the problems, maybe 50-60%, which is not bad. And I'm sure that had we not done so, these problems would have continued for months, if not years. And then I think we met a second, I'm not sure about third time, we met a second time, and we solved another 10-15%. So what I felt, why I spoke of, wanted to speak about camaraderie, is because I felt that if you don't get on well with people who wear your uniform or naval or army uniform, if you don't make an attempt, you're not doing justice to your job. And NDA and other training institutions certainly help in this process. And I don't know, I only hope that since we left, because we all left about the same time, I hope that, some people were at least thought, this is a good idea, let's try and, solve problems between us without resorting to letters and notes and all that stuff. Let's see. I think my time would be over by now. So let me conclude by saying, look, we have all tried, all of you who have spoken before me in particular, to make the point that it is well worth considering a career in the armed forces. Whether Air Force, Army, Navy really doesn't matter too much. But you have, and what's more, as has been brought out very well, at various stages of your life, not just when you are a teenager or so and you want to enter NDA, but subsequently also. And I think that's it was very well put across. But at the same time, I would want to say that ultimately the choice is yours, because what do we all want finally? We want to be happy in our lives now. So I would urge everybody who is still at that stage in life where he wants to decide, what am I going to do with the rest of my years? Aim for happiness first. Choose a profession which keeps you think will make you happy. And I know that all of us who have worn uniform are going to say you have a very good chance of being happy in the armed forces. But can any of us guarantee it? We cannot. But so I would say do what makes you happy. And, just work hard to be a true professional, work with integrity and work with humanity. And I think you'll be happy wherever you are, whatever uniform you wear or don't wear. Okay, now I think I'll take advantage of my age and seniority to say a few words of my own service. As a service I spent 40 years in. And that is, and of course, the branch in which I serve, because as Prakash will no doubt tell you, there is the bond between pilots is very, very strong. It remains, I'm sure it's for submariners, maybe armored corps guys, I don't know much about that, but certainly amongst flyers, long after you hung up your overalls and all that, that bond remains. And it continues all your life. Nagesh reminded me of something which I had written or said. And, even today, there are times when I miss the smell of aviation fuel. I miss the sound of the aircraft roaring down the runway for takeoff. I miss the sight of the aircraft, climbing away. And, even here in the flat, if I hear an aircraft, I'm running out. I have to slow down because of my age now. So I don't run around so much. I walk slowly, but it's something that just stays with you. And, the things you do in the air, like astronauts, I mean, nobody can sort of imagine what they see and do and so forth. People like trekking at 14,000, 15,000 feet. What do I know about all that? I don't, but I admire all these goings on. Likewise for us who have flown, I tell you what, the things you've done, the things you've seen, for those of us with the gift of wings, we don't envy anyone, any man, woman, or child on earth. It just stays with you. Thank you very much for your attention. Jai Hind.
And Commodore Sadashiv, Vomatkere, Wing Commander Prakash Kalavar, and Colonel Ashwin Baindur for being with us today and sharing your experience with the viewers. I would like to sum up simply by saying that the armed forces provide everything desirable in a career for an officer, and it is worth striving for. I trust this video will serve to inspire those who are wishing to don the uniform. I would also like to thank Krishnanand Heblekar and Aditya Chandravarkar and his team for helping in recording this presentation. I now hand you back to Krishnanand Heblekar. Jai Hind.
Thank you so much, Nagesh ma'am. I would like to thank everyone on behalf of the Sayujam team and the technical team especially who have recorded this event. And first and foremost, I would like to thank our Mathadipati Sadyojat Shankarashram Swamiji for giving us an opportunity to present this for the benefit of the Samaj and bring out the various facets of life in uniform. I would like to thank Bandur Nagesh Rao for coordinating the entire effort. He has gone to great pains in writing out the script and everything and made things easier for the rest of us. My personal thanks to Air Marshal Munkur Pratap Rao, Colonel Ashwin Baindur, Commodore Sadashiv Vomatkere, and Wing Commander Prakash Kalavar for so readily assenting to participate in this presentation. Thank you very much. Lastly, thank you all the viewers for so patiently listening to this, and I hope it inspires many of the Amchi youth to consider life in the armed forces. I will be doing the concluding prayers now. Vandantu sadhaka sarve vinashantu vidushakaha avastha shambhavi mestu prasannostu guru sada sarve bhavantu sukhinah sarve santu niramayaha sarve bhadrani pashyantu ma kaschid dukkham apnuyat. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you and Jai Shankar to all.